Here's every important event to happen in the MCU so far. Hey there everybody, the MCU's heading into a new year, and with that a new phase, Phase 5. So let's take a look back at some of the most important events to happen in the MCU so far, chronologically. First off, and maybe most importantly, Steve Rogers becomes Captain America. He would of course later go on to lead the Avengers, but in the beginning, he was just a young soldier who got that super soldier serum and became a hero that the United States needed. We see the introduction of the Tesseract, aka the Space Stone, and of course Red Skull and Hydra want their hands on it. They're trying to make some weapons and do some overall bad stuff. Bucky Barnes is introduced as Steve Rogers' best friend, and then he's killed off. Well, at least seemingly. Of course, we know he will later be back as the Winter Soldier. And of course, this is where Sheild gets started up. Sheild is a very vital part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which acts as the counterpart to Hydra. And Captain America: The First Avengers, where we first hear about Vibranium. Of course, Vibranium will become a lot more prominent in the MCU with the introduction of Black Panther later on, but we learn that Steve Rogers' Captain America's shield is made of Vibranium, the strongest metal on Earth. Chronologically, within the timeline, Captain Marvel comes after Captain America: The First Avenger, and of course, we get some important things with this movie as well. The Tesseract is returned to Sheild, and Phil Coulson is introduced. Phil Coulson would play a vital part, especially when it comes to the Avengers. It's within this movie that we first get the idea of the Avengers. The concept of a superhero team that can defend Earth and America is created here, and then Captain Marvel, of course, leaves Earth. She's not going to be back for a little bit. We also get the introduction of Skrulls, and while they haven't played a major part in the MCU thus far, we know that they're going to play a major part in the future, especially with series like Secret Invasion coming to Disney+. We see the introduction of Maria Rambeau, and we see how Nick Fury loses his eye. It's very important, pivotal to the story, how he loses his eye. It's at this point that we meet up with the first movie, okay? It's the Iron Man. This is what started the MCU, but it's not what comes first in the story chronologically, so here it lands. Tony Stark becoming Iron Man in that cave is probably the most pivotal part to the MCU, because it's what started it. And of course, Iron Man would go on to be the most pivotal, important, iconic character of all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We learn about Jarvis, the artificial intelligence system used by Tony Stark, and Tony Stark vows to stop making weaponry. This is a big part because this was who he was. This is what Stark Industries did until this point. We get to meet Rhodey. Of course, this is a slightly different version of Rhodey than we're used to from the rest of the MCU due to little recasting, and Nick Fury begins to recruit the Marvel Cinematic Avengers. He begins to recruit them. He goes to Iron Man and says, "I would like to talk to you about the Avengers Initiative." Next up is a movie that's kind of forgotten. It's been put on the back shelf, and that's The Incredible Hulk. It doesn't feel like it's a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe because so much has changed. The overall design of Hulk is completely different, and of course we have another recast. And to be honest, The Incredible Hulk doesn't do a whole lot for the story or the furtherment of the plot for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It does introduce us to Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, who we suspect is going to play a major role in the future with the new casting of Harrison Ford. Iron Man 2 may not be super well or highly thought of within the MCU, but it did a lot of important things. Namely, it introduced Natasha Romanoff, okay? It gave us Black Widow. This is where she came from, and this is where we see Rhodey become War Machine. This is also the movie where we begin to see that romantic relationship between Pepper Potts and Tony Stark start up. Of course, later on we know that that becomes a lot more serious, and Thor's hammer makes its way to Earth right here in this film. Which leads us directly to the next movie, Thor. So here Chris Hemsworth is introduced as Thor with those bleached eyebrows and all. But possibly, maybe, even more importantly than the introduction of Thor, is we get the introduction of Loki. And I know that that's kind of a hard thing to say it's more important, but Loki would play such a pivotal role in the future of the MCU. Not to say that Thor wouldn't, but Loki in a different way. Of course, it's within Thor that we also get the introduction of Clint Barton, Hawkeye, who would go on to get his own series later on, and we'll get there. We also meet Jane Foster in this movie, and we see the romantic connection between her and Thor that would play a pivotal role in Phase 4. Now, it's in this movie that Loki discovers the Tesseract, which of course would play a pivotal role in the future of the MCU, and he dies for the first time of many. And this all culminated with the Avengers, the original one, the very first superhuman team-up within the cinematic universe, and this was a groundbreaking moment for film. Joss Whedon directed the superhuman team-up, and a lot of very important things happened within this movie. This is where we first learn of the Mind Stone. It enters the MCU right here, and we even get the first hint at Thanos within this movie and its after credits. And speaking of that recast from The Incredible Hulk, this is the movie where Mark Ruffalo steps into the role that Edward Norton had previously been playing, and he has continued to play that role up through Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 5. So that's it for Phase 1 of our chronological recap, and we will be back soon with Phase 2. Be sure to like and follow us on Instagram, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and stay tuned for more great content.